And I'll mute you all for a moment. So I'll unmute you later. So we are live now. I will make the post on photos worth seeing. I hope I prepared the post. I did. So I'll make the post in case it works. Yes, it works. So the post is out on photos worth seeing .tumblr.com, and we'll be, I think we're gonna wait a couple of seconds so that they're, I don't even know if on StreamYard. On Hangouts, I always saw how many people are currently watching. I don't see that in StreamYard, but everything else is so much better on StreamYard. So this is a really cool software. So it is June 20th of 2020 amidst the COVID pandemic, but we will still keep socially distant because we stream live, and we're going to start today's show. Hello, 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 and welcome to In Conversation 31 June the 20th, 2020. And today we have not one guest, no, we have two guests on the show, and we're also, of course, in the chat. So I'll just type hello. So you can everybody who can watch. No, I put it in the private chat. I'm stupid. We have a private chat. we can. You can. You all who are watching, you can chat with us live during this In Conversation. And who is us? Ladies first with us at the third time, I guess. Jennifer. Nature Lovers 69 on Tumblr, and I will put, of course, the all of the links to your blogs and other social media in the description on YouTube, of course. Also with us today, the first time, Mark Room. Mark Rome? How do you pronounce your name, Mark? Oh, I have to unmute you.
It's okay. Room is good.
Room. Then Mark Room, also on Tumblr, Mark Room, and also on Instagram. There will be all the links in the description on YouTube. And of course, Fernando, Fern, all things Fern on Tumblr, and also you will find all his social media accounts in the description later after the show on YouTube. And hello to the chat. James is on the chat. Steph is on the chat. Amy is on the chat. So, and I think this time and my name's Pete, by the way. I like pictures, but you know that. And I got a haircut. How cool is that? Right? Very much needed. I saved a pillow company by my donation. They would have went broke. But okay. So, today I think is the opportunity for all of you out there who are watching, and I will try to remind you all during the show that you can take part in this conversation by being part of this conversation in the chat, because today we're going to talk about photography quotes, famous and infamous photography quotes by famous and infamous and not so famous photographers and other people, right? And Fern was so kind to put together a list of quotes, and we're gonna talk about them. And but yeah, did I forget something?
All
Fern,
good.
you have Fern forgot something. Fern forgot to unmute himself. No, I forgot to unmute Fern.
There you go. So you forgot to mention that you're part of AWS.
I am, yes.
Forgot to mention your Tumblr. So, or
Or
Tumblr,
Tumblr,
because you have like what?
I left like 500. Yeah,
Okay,
my Tumblr
great.
is TVOOM, that is TVOOM, and TVOOM365, that is TVOOM365 in numbers. You can also find me on Instagram, which is TVOOM Photo in one word, that is TVOOMPHOTO. So I think that's enough. And you can find me also on YouTube, but you know that because you're on my channel.
Oh, and I
And I
posted
posted
the
the
link
link
to
to
the
the
quotes, to my
to my
quotes on
quotes
the
on the. Yes, you posted the link
in the
in the
chat.
chat. In the chat. I don't see the link because apparently it's the same problem again because I still haven't made you an admin on my chat um on my channel, and so nobody can post links. So
So I
that's why. But
posted it
I
on.
posted them.
Oh, okay.
I posted them in the chat so everyone can uh, just check them
What
out.
year is that?
So the idea, just to make that clear, right? I think that's important. We are not here to find the ultimate definition of a photography quote. We don't say, hey, what we say, that is what is the meaning of that quote. What we want to do is to simply talk about these quotes. We want to find all the meanings that we can come up with of these quotes, and just simply dive into that, because I think, or we think, that's even more beneficial than just trying to find the one ultimate meaning of a quote. And Amy writes on the chat, Fern has an echo, or is it just me? Can you say something, Fern?
Yes. It's
It's
echo.
echo.
I'm telling you, there's echo from the three of us.
It's interesting because I don't have any echo on my audio.
And
And
you don't get it.
get it.
And I
And
don't
I
know
don't
why,
know
because
why,
it's not
because
the
not the
headphone.
headphone. So, yeah. Do you want to start, Fern, with the first quote? And I will share that screen.
Um, think in
Think in
terms
terms
of
of
images and
images and
words.
words.
They can
They
be
can be
mighty
mighty
powerful.
powerful
They
when
are
they are
fitted
fitted
together
together
properly.
properly.
That's
That's
Gordon
Gordon
Parks.
Parks. Okay, I'll repeat. For whatever reason, I cannot share that screen because it's on my. Oh no, I have to do it this way. Let me try it this way. Share screen. Beep beep boop. No, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? So
Technology.
now it works. For whatever reason, now it works. Okay. Think in terms of images and words. They can be mighty powerful when they are
Fitted.
fitted together properly. Gordon Parks.
So,
So
okay.
okay,
I
I
chose this
chose this
one
one
because
because
um,
um,
for
for
me,
me,
I
I
have
have
the
the
ability
ability
to
to
express
express
myself
myself
well in
well in
writing,
writing,
very well
very
in
well
writing.
in writing.
Spoken,
Spoken,
and in
and in
photography,
photography,
I,
I
I've been
I've been
told I can
told I
express
express
myself
myself
well,
well,
but a
but a
lot
lot
of
of
artists,
artists,
not just
not just
photographers,
photography,
visual
visual
artists,
artists,
always express, or often express the fact that there's another quote, I think, in here about that. That they basically, if they had the word, they would need to take the picture. So that for them, the full art is communicating that their words complete or do in the same way. And that's something I always think about because often or always wait, because I like with the critique example, or with talking about our pictures, I know that I stressed that all the time, that the need for us to be able to do that. But it's something that can be hard, you know what I mean? And yet we're so afraid of we're stuck in this, oh, well, my pictures do my talking, or pictures don't need explanations because the picture is worth 1,000 words. And considering this was from Gordon Parks, who I don't know if you all know, but he was a movie director, he was a composer, he was a writer, a photographer. I mean, he was truly a Renaissance man. For me, it's interesting because he in that quote talks about how the two things can work together if they're put together properly. So that makes it perfect for me. That's all.
Do you hear me? No. Okay. Now I hear myself. Weird. On- Today seems to be the show with the sound problems, I guess.
I know, and I was just thinking, we can't hear Pete. Oh, that's sad.
Give me a second.
And we lost Mark.
So that should work now. For whatever reason, I'll have to unplug that. So Mark is back. So it seems to be the show of the sound problems for whatever reason, because the chat says that it's hard to hear Fern, which I can confirm. Confirm. And Mark seems to have an echo. And hello to Roy Lindenarden's highlights is now on the chat. We haven't really started yet because we've been dealing with some sound problems, which is really interesting because I tried to do something today. I wanted to stream from the other room because I found a way how to connect my other camera, whatever, and it didn't work because I had no sound at all. So I went over here again, and so we have sound. Maybe it's something with the stars, some constellation or whatever. So I think in terms, so let me repeat the quote by Gordon Parks. Think in terms of images and words. They can be mighty powerful when they're fitted together properly. So it's more than, oh, I forgot to add Mark. Sorry, I have to, because Mark was gone for a minute and I have to manually add people. I'm sorry, Mark. I saw you
No problem.
in the on my screen, but I didn't get that you're not on the stream. So it's about a combination of what I find interesting, because words and photos fitted together doesn't necessarily mean that we have to give a photo, for example, a title, or that we have to add a description by words, but that it can be something that, because a lot of us, right, or in many ways we think with words, and it's when we see an apple, we think apple, right? We think the word apple. And so this 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 balance between what we see, because seeing something is more than just trying to find a word for what we see. There's emotions, there are thoughts, there are feelings, there are smells sometimes, right? When we're outside somewhere, or even inside right now. I should open the window, but I can't. Um, so and this there's sometimes a tension between the words that come to our minds and what we see. So I don't know if that is what necessarily has to be, but it's also something that, especially when we talk about abstract photography, for example, we often struggle to understand what we see because we don't find the proper words for that. And
Well, I kind of can I say something?
yeah, of course,
Sorry,
please.
sorry to cut you off, Pete.
No, please.
I know
cut me off.
that's Fern's job, but I'll do it today.
No. It's everybody's job, please.
It kind of goes against the saying that a picture tells 1,000 words, because there are occasions where the words will complement the photograph or the picture, but there are often times where the photographer tries to explain his photograph too much, and then it detracts from what the photograph is actually saying, or the emotion that the viewer extracts from the image or the photograph.
Right. And I think what's really important is what you both said, and what Pete's always saying, it's a guideline. I mean, it's not one way or the other. But again, a lot of times there are people with the argument, oh well, words aren't needed. No, words are fine if you want to add them. They're not. It's up to you with photography. So yeah, I that's why I chose that.
Yeah. So, and I see on the chat there seems to be a persistent problem with the echo on Fern's and Mark's audio. The sound is awful. Can it be fixed? Yes, it's interestingly enough, Roy. I don't hear. Do you guys and girls, of course, or girl, have any echo with the other person? Because I don't have any echo at all on my headphones, which is weird.
There's no echo with you, Pete. Only with Fern. And if when Jen talks, maybe.
It's the three of us.
Which is weird. Did you change anything about your setup, Fern?
No.
It's the same headphones, the same microphone.
And for me, mine isn't as bad as Mark and Jennifer's.
So you hear your own echo?
Yes.
Weird.
But I only hear just the ones back. With Jennifer and Mark, I hear the echo.
Mm-hmm.
And with you, nothing. Which is wonderful.
That is indeed weird. No echo on Pete's audio from the chat as well. So Mike Mansell writes, I think Pete is sabotaging Fern's feed to keep him quiet. I would love to. I would love to be able to do that. If there's anything I would wish for, then it's that. But well, I can simply shut him up by muting him. That's what I can do.
Yeah, and the less I talk, the better.
So no, actually, I have absolutely no idea how we can fix that because because I don't I don't know because I don't even have the problems on my headphones, which is weird. So didn't we have a problem like that once and then it got better on over the course?
But it
Of
was a
the show.
long time ago.
That's a long time ago. Maybe I can, but that was even back then on Hangouts. Let me check something with the audio disabled. I could try something. I could try something. Amy writes, sounds like reverb. Yeah, that's what echo is, right? So I made a slight little change, but I don't know if that affects I don't hear a difference in my audio, of course, but don't hear the audio that I'm sending out. So no.
Your audio is fine. Oh, no echo now.
Okay, then I fixed the
Not for
problem.
me. Mark, Jennifer, say something.
Something.
Fine now.
Something.
Yeah, all three of us are fine now.
Okay, then
Yeah,
apparently,
that's
Well,
perfect.
let's see what the
Much
chat
better.
says.
what does the chat say? Is there
Pete's fault.
still echo? My fault. Apparently. So the chat's
Yeah.
silent, so I probably
Roy says it's good.
Okay, it seems that
Much
the
more
private
better.
chat.
It's all Pete's fault. Oh, that sounds so good. That felt wonderful. Oh,
Fixed. Okay.
I don't need to say anything else.
Cathartic.
Everyone says that the sound is now okay. So what I did was funnily enough, it's a learning curve, right? In my audio settings, I had to disable the audio processing, which is interesting. But
So
okay.
I just want to add something at the very end of this. I have an announcement because speaking of learning curve, I have an announcement at the end of this.
Okay. And now your sound is so much better because it was chopping off all the time.
Okay.
Very cool. So
All right. So should we cover again what what we talked about with
talk about
that
words.
first quote, or
We lost
move
so
on?
many words on words.
I think
No,
we've
let's
said enough
go to
about the
next.
words.
Let's go to the next one, I guess. Let's go to the next one. Let me read it. It's by a quote by Irving Penn, who said, "Using simple equipment and daylight alone is for me a pleasure and a replenishment." So, what I love about that, I didn't know that quote, but what I love about that quote is that it's not some sort of a you have to do this or it has to be done like that, but he just simply says what he feels like. And so why I do it's not necessarily that it's a thing of that I don't want to accept what other people say, because I do. If someone says something important or good or something that opens new doors for me, I'm the first one. I love to talk with people who can teach me something, right? So, but what I love about this approach is simply saying, hey, this is one possibility that works for me and that I enjoy. And so it's I love these types of things, especially simply because it's so encouraging, right? In terms of, hey, this is something I enjoy, that works for me, that I get something out of. And so it makes me more open to try that stuff. And also, and I think that's the more important thing about that, it makes me accept failure easier, because it's, hey, it's a game, right? I play with that. I try something, I experiment, and in experimentation, in playing, there's no failure. We just learn something, and we learn, hey, if I do it this way, then this will be the result. If I do it that way, that will be the result. And if you say, hey, you have to do it this way, then if you don't succeed this way, then you fail. And nobody likes failure. So
But
that's
I
what
think I think that's down to our definition of failure and mistakes. Is that if we don't get the result that we are expecting, we automatically label it as a failure. But I don't think it is that. I think it's just a different result.
Right.
Sorry, call from a friend.
You have friends?
Not you, that's for sure.
I'm surprised.
So I'm sorry, what did you say, Mark?
I think what Pete was saying about that we don't, I don't know what he said, something about failures and how we view them.
I basically said that it's a different way to approach things. If you say, hey, this is what I like, this is what works for me, and this is what I enjoy, then it makes me probably want to try it more than if someone tells me this is how it's done. And then it's another thing when I do it, when I try it out and I don't get the results than I expected. Then if it's a thing like, hey, I enjoy doing that, and if I don't succeed there, then I don't feel like as if it's a failure. And basically it's what you said, Mark, right? It's a different, it's a different result. And if it's a classic, hey, this is how to do it, and we don't succeed this way, then it's a failure because I didn't succeed that way, and there's no way of saying, hey, I mean that's exactly what you said, Mark, right?
Yeah.
We get a different result when we, and so yeah, it's probably a question of how to see even instructions, how to see even way that people teach us. Um, do we see if we don't get the results? Um, how do we approach our own results, right? And yeah, probably too much. I'm probably thinking too much in school terms, right? You have to get that result or else you fail.
Yeah, I think that's a very German thing to think. But I think you're right. I think we get too caught up in the technical things. Like you have to have the ISO at this and the focus at this and the f-stops at this, and instead of just enjoying the photography, enjoying the process, enjoying being outside in nature or in the studio or being with people. But we get too caught up in the you must do it ABC instead of just enjoying the moment.
Well, and I think that you bring up an interesting point, Mark, because I think for some people, that aspect of having all the settings and yada yada, that is part of the enjoyment. And I understand that.
Yeah,
But
sure.
but I think, and it goes back to what Pete was saying about, and what Pete has always said about guidelines as opposed to this is how you do this and how we sort of divide. And I thought I actually like this one for several reasons. The whole gear thing that we're fixated on, um, you know, again, it depends, and different people are happy with their but there's being doing it out of happiness, and there's doing it out of having a need of being competitive, of this is the way you do things, one way or the other. There's also the fact that Irving Penn, I don't know if any of you know this, but Irving Penn was one of the top fashion photographers at around the same time as Richard Avedon, who's also one of my heroes as a photographer, and so is Irving Penn. But Irving Penn also did fashion. He did incredible portrait work, and he also did still lifes. And he experimented, and he did what, in a sense, what Pete was saying. And so, to me, it's fascinating that here's someone who was incredibly famous, incredibly powerful in his career, and who broke out of what he was doing, who had all of the equipment, all the power, whatever, and yet for him to say something like that um, was real interesting because I focus on his use of the word refreshing, how having all of this infrastructure to work in, and yet that was refreshing for him because, and I fully understand this. Um, I've only done studio photography once, and I've talked about this before. And I walked in, and it was TJ who was on with us a couple of years ago. He set up the lighting, he set up everything. I just walked in like a star photographer. He handed me the eight Nikon D800 with this incredible 105 prime lens that is for portrait, that has the defocusing, the bokeh, and people walked in. I took the shots and they were done. And they're gorgeous shots. There's an incredible amount of creativity that goes into doing what TJ did in setting all of that up. But by the same token, there's an incredible amount of creativity in just having natural light and a simple camera, or maybe not a simple camera, because I mean, I do have the A7R3, which is, cutting edge technology, although now there's the A7R4. Um, but still, that's how I shoot. I shoot natural light, and this is what I see, and so there's creativity in that too, and I think that is what's really striking to me, that here's someone who enjoys doing both, obviously. Although I'm sure as Irving Penn, he had all kinds of assistants, and he could, everything would be set up. He would just approve or disapprove, and let's get started. The other thing that this makes me think of, going back to the creativity and going back to the whole idea of looking at Irving Penn's body of work, is what Sean Tucker said in one of his last videos, which is photograph what you like, which we shared on Tumblr. And that's exactly what Irving Penn embodies, I think, more than most of the top photographers, at least in the field of fashion. Annie Leibovitz, Richard Avedon, they have done other kinds of photography, but they've still sort of been within the portrait fashion photography thing, although Annie Leibovitz is now doing some nature photography. But Irving Penn has this creativity that he just said, fuck it, I want to shoot dead fruit, or whatever. I can't remember what it was, but I know it was some really interesting stuff that he did. So anyway, that's why I chose that. Jennifer, you have something to add? You have been awfully quiet.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today. What I like about this is I work with very simple equipment. And for me, the daylight, the nighttime, I mean, all of it is important. And it is just a pleasure of mine because I do this with this right here. And that's it, So most of my pictures, there's not really any that I like seek out. I just see it. And then I'm like, well, sometimes I got to pull over and take a picture or, find those things again. But other than that, it's just kind of in the moment. So yeah, it's just the simplicity of it for me and enjoyment of it. So just being out, and I do enjoy it, even if I don't get the shot exactly how I want it. The enjoyment it's there,
We could make a game of synchronizing Fern, and he talks, right? Has muted himself, and we just words in his mouth. That would be a really cool thing. So I. What?
I'm sorry. So I muted myself. Oh, I thought I was on mute. So anyway, I laughed when you said that, Jennifer, about the driving and stopping, because right now, where I live, because I live in the middle of farmland, in a very small town, really. And this is an agricultural university after all, even though there's other stuff. But there's sunflower fields, and I've taken pictures of the sunflowers before, and I'm like, you know what? So I've gone out a couple of times, and finally they've started to blossom. And I was taking pictures. I try to be so careful because, like, now with the whole Instagram thing and everything, there's all these people now taking pictures, and they go in the field and they kill the plants. And I actually saw these fools, by the way, taking pictures, and then with a whole bunch, they just picked a handful of sunflowers, and it's like, what the fuck? But anyway, so I was being really careful, and I was standing there with my camera, and it was the 24 to 105, and I stepped in mud, and the mud out here is very clay-like and very thick, and when it gets to a certain point and it's still wet and still dry, it's very slippery. So I fell not once but twice in the mud. And then it's mud that's like clay, so it really does dry hard, and so I fell twice. The camera's fine, but I'm all full of mud. So yes, that's why I was laughing at that, because I was thinking, the things we do to take a fucking picture of a stupid flower that we can go to the market and take a picture of right there. But the light and the thing so yeah, I get it. Anyway, that's all.
Next quote.
Next.
All right, we'll try. Next quote is by Imogen Cunningham, who said, "There are too many people studying photography now who are never going to make it. You can't give them a formula for making it. You have to have it in you first. You don't learn it. The seeing eye is the important thing."
Wow.
So, do I understand that correctly? That she says you cannot learn photography, or you cannot learn to be successful in photography. And then there's the question, what is success? Or what is the
Well, I
definition
think
of
I
success?
think she's approaching it more from an artistic, I will say, considering that it's Imogen Cunningham and that she was one of the pioneers, really. Because I think she started photography, I want to say maybe as far back as the late 1800s. Um, and so I think with her, it's always been the creativity. I don't think she was ever like a professional studio photographer, come in and I'll take your portraits, or I'll do, like even Ansel Adams did. Ansel Adams came to this campus and to the University of California system in general, and was hired to take pictures of the campus, and they're kind of dull pictures. But so I think it's from the artistic point of view. Okay. So that's the only thing I will say about that. I will silence my.
But I think
Yeah,
that's true of most art. You get so many people who go to art school or to music school or to film school, but they're not going to be the next John Mayer or Quentin Tarantino or whoever. They're going to be the guy who's taking the passport photos at the local photo shop, or whoever it's going to be.
And to me, this okay. So I chose this because, and again, this is something that I think we've mentioned here before. Um, Friends will come. Oh, you're a photographer, or you take. Well, first of all, you're a photographer just because you have a fancy camera, right off the bat. You get that all the time. Then tell me how, I want to go with you and take a walk, and or tell me how you do this, and it's like, no, having been on that side of it twice, when I had my SLRs 40 years ago, and then about 15, 20 years ago, I just thought you picked up a camera and took pictures and you became Helmut Newton. No. So, and I think that's part of the assumption, and I'm glad you said that, Mark, about Tarantino and John, the singer that you mentioned, because I think that's the assumption, and I think that's only increased in the more modern era because photographers have become superstars in the 70s and 80s, fashion photographers especially, and now we have Instagram where, you know, the influencers and so on. So it's that whole idea. Do I think you can learn to be a better photographer? Yes, because that's one thing that I have learned. But I actually just thought of, after listening to you, there's On Writing by Stephen King. He says, which is a book about specifically the mechanics of writing that he wrote. He says, you know, if you learn writing technique, you can become from being a bad writer to being a moderately good writer. Okay, you can write mechanically well. You can use proper grammar, but and if you are, but you know, you have to have that talent to go to becoming a magnificent writer. Of course, he's talking about creative writing and fiction and so on, but I think that applies in any form of art. You can have some talent and be like the guy Mark mentioned who's taking the passport photos and be wonderful at it, but I don't know. There might be some creativity to that. I don't know because it depends on the person who's doing it. But does that same photographer who's been doing that and who's interested in that and doesn't have the quote unquote eye to do what I do, you know? But then there, I have the eye to do what I do, but I can't. The ¿Cómo se llama esto? The landscape photos that Pete does, for example. I might take a good one every once in a while if I'm lucky, but I don't have the eye to do that sort of photography. I could maybe learn, but I think there's a connection that we have that we come with, which can also fade or we can develop new ones. I get that because I don't believe that any of us are static and this is how we are and we don't change. But so I do agree with her, and I think that that's a quote I want to say from the 70s, maybe 80s, when you know fashion, when photography had started becoming something that's in a part of the educational system. But I think it applies even more now. So yeah, that's why I chose that.
I did.
Well, just
Sorry?
coming back to what, sorry, Pete, one last thing,
No,
and then
please.
you can talk. Something that Quentin Tarantino always says that stuck with me is when people ask him how he became such a great director. They ask him, "Did you go to film school?" And he says, "No, I went to films." He immersed himself in the movies and the films, and didn't worry about the technical, theoretical whatnots. But that's what he studied. He studied the films themselves and what made a good film. And I think that comes back to what you said, Fern, is that we can improve in certain areas, but if you don't have that inherent talent, then you maybe just are not cut out to be the next famous photographer.
Right, right. And I'll give you an example now that you said that about the talent. You know, perfect example. I am horrible at doing stuff with rulers and measurements. I cannot sew a button. If my life depended on it, I cannot sew. I have tried. I cannot knit. I might be able to. There are certain things that for some reason that are mechanical things that I am horrible at. I'm not a good typist, and I've taken typing lessons. I went through like three. There are just things I know a little, but I think so. But there's other things that I can do, and I think that is part of the fallacy that we live with in modern times. I think, at least in many Western cultures. But I think that's also spreading that kind of oh, you can do anything you want, and it's like fuck no. And there's stuff I can do that yes, maybe I can do it, but and a perfect example is painting. As a matter of fact, I can paint, although I'm really horrible with colors. But it takes me what little I can do takes me hours, and it's not fun. So you know what? I don't want to fucking do it. So there's a whole spectrum of ways of approaching this, But I think yes, what Mark said, the innate, you have to have a spark. There has to be something that attracts you. And I think whether you want to be a cashier at your corner market, there's a talent for that, and God love you for that. And there's a talent for cooking or whatever that we just bring to it. And we I will say, and it goes back to what you said, Mark, about Tarantino. There's the feeding of it by studying what others have done. Although I will also say, at least for me with photography, um, I broaden that. I don't just look at other photographers. As a matter of fact, I don't really look at other photographers and think, oh, I really want to do what they did. I mean, kinda, but I'm more inspired, for example, by paintings, by film, and so all of the visual art forms influence me, and I study visual arts in general, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
But what kind of throws me off about that quote is maybe it's just the way I read it, right? But I kind of have the feeling that um, it it's implied that the seeing eye, as she said, right? Because she said you have to have it in you first. You don't learn it. The seeing eye is the important thing, as if you cannot learn the seeing eye. And that's what I disagree with, because I know it about about myself, right? I had no when I was when I started out, right, with photography, my photos were horrible because I simply didn't see anything, right? And that's what you learn over time. Maybe, and this is what maybe the notion is, you cannot learn it as in being taught how things work. You have to experience it yourself. And that's maybe where talent comes in, that some people experience it, ingest it faster than others. But is it I think it was Bob Ross who said talent is just pursued interest. So how much do we focus on something, right? It's what you said about painting when you said it's no fun. So it's work. You don't want
For
to
me, yeah,
yeah,
totally, yeah,
right. For you, it's
yeah.
work for you. You don't want to do it. Um, and here's the thing: if you enjoy drawing a line, then you will put more emphasis on that. You will put more energy into that because you get. And there we are, right at Irving Penn again, right? It's a pleasure, a replenishment, right? So then we do that. Then we approach it in a very very different way. So I know that I'm mostly landscape nature a landscape nature photographer, right? I enjoy doing portraits, but portraits are work for me. So I don't enjoy them as much as being on the top of a mountain and looking downside and finding my composition and seeing, oh, there's a cloud. Let's wait 5 seconds or a minute and finding the right exposure setting and then checking the picture and saying, no, I want the contrast is still too high. Let me dial that back. So that is what I enjoy, getting the exact feeling. It's not even the picture, it's the exact feeling that I want to have in form of a picture. And when it's portraits, for example, I and we talked about that. And that, because that's what you mentioned about the few portraits that you've seen that I made. It's that I'm rather I hate posing people. I absolutely despise telling people, hey, do this, do that. I'm more the person, I observe, right, and I find the right moment, try to get the moment, and then I press the button and it works or it doesn't work. And so that's what I enjoy. I would I I don't like and on the other hand, it's kind of a perverse enjoyment, having to do, for example, corporate portraits, when you have to get these exact photos of people, and you have to sometimes complete strangers that you never met before, and you have like 20 minutes to get that right photo, that right pose, so that they will fit in the gallery of others. So that but then it's a different thing for me. It's not the photography part of it, but the working with people part that I enjoy, right? So I think it's always finding the knobs and dials and buttons that you enjoy to turn, to fiddle around with. And I think if you don't find that knob and dial and button to switch, then there's no joy in it. And
But I
if
think that goes back. But I think that goes back to what she said, to the whole thing of the innate talent. And I don't think she's arguing that you cannot refine your talent, that you cannot develop it, that you can't. Um, I think what she's saying is, the bottom line is, if you think you're going to pick up a camera and buy a, I don't know, whatever, one of the new Sony or Nikon mirrorless cameras, and you think you're going to put on a $1,200 lens on there, and you're going to become, I don't know, Annie Leibovitz, let's say, you maybe, but I think that's the fallacy that we fall under. And again, I'll even say, I don't think it's even just because of the more recent, because that's an old quote. Um, and I've talked about this before. For me, the reason I fell under that spell of thinking, oh, I just pick up the camera and I'm, Francesco Scavullo, who nobody talks about anymore, who's a gorgeous photographer. Um, you know, that's the way it's presented to us too. I mean, you look at a movie like Funny Face, which is I absolutely love, and I hate musicals, but I love this one. Where it's the photographer and he's fashionable and he's talented, but you never see the work behind that. And we talk about all of these people who are incredible photographers, incredible artists. How often do we hear about all of their struggles, unless we delve in because we're interested in that art form and we want to refine what we do. Now, if you love to cook and if you have that talent for
but
cooking, you're going to do the same thing for cooking. You're going to do
right,
so.
but
I think that interest and that talent has to be there, even just a grain.
yeah,
Anyway.
definitely. But here's the thing, right? And that's maybe that pisses me off when I read. I'll read the whole quote again, right? There are too many people studying photography now who are never going to make it. You can't give them a formula for making it. You have to have it in you first. You don't learn it. The seeing eye is the important thing. And here's the thing. And what does she mean when she says, and this, here we are at success again, right? You're not gonna make it. What is that? People studying photography who are not gonna make it. So when it's kind of the combination, right? When you're studying photography, you study photography usually to make it. There are very few people who say, "Hey, I'm going to study photography because I'm interested in photography and I just want to be a better photographer." People study photography to become photographers and to live off photography.
Right.
And she said there are too many of them who are not going to make it because they don't have it in them. So there's a thing, and I think maybe that's can be the one way to approach that. Why are you studying photography? Are you studying photography to become a successful photographer, or are you studying photography to become a good photographer or a
Well, I
better
think you can do
make
both.
great photographs? And I think making great photographs or making great art is not necessarily connected with becoming successful, whatever that means, whatever success means. For one, I think I'm an incredibly successful photographer for the simple reason that I don't think that I'm an incredibly good photographer. Not at all. I think I'm a decent photographer, right? I don't put my light under the, I don't know the saying goes, but I think I'm
For
a
sure.
decent photographer, but I don't think that I'm a great photographer, whatever. But I think I'm an incredibly successful photographer because I can do exactly what I want to do. I can go outside taking photos of what I want. I can publish my photos um, so that people can see them. And sometimes I make a buck or two of photography and exactly of those type of jobs that I want to do. I can't make a living of that because if I would want to make a living of that, then I'd have to take very different photos and I'd have to approach photography very differently, which I don't want to. At least not at the moment. Maybe in 5 years or in 2 years or in 2 days, I think differently. I don't think I will, but it can happen. But I think I'm an incredibly successful photographer because I can do photography just the way I like it, and that I have a job that pays for my for my photography, and sometimes my photography pays for stuff that I enjoy doing later because I sometimes do work as a photographer, but not very often. So for me, this is success. This is big success. And for others, they would say, "Hey, I want to make a good living off photography." That would be success, which is absolutely fine, right?
But
This
I
is
think,
different approaches.
but I think I mean, that's the way you're seeing it. But I think making it could be, I mean, the way I read it and the way I still think of it is, well, for whatever reason you went into art school, you think you're going to be a photographer, and a lot of people will fall by the wayside and not become a photographer. And you see this all the time, even on Tumblr. You know, I mean, there's a lot of people who have come and gone who were interested in doing photography, or friends of mine. I'm doing blah blah blah. I'm going to be a photographer. My friend who I bought my baby, my D50 from 8 years ago, who started me on this path just by selling me his used camera. Um, I was just talking to him yesterday. He to me, he's a successful photographer. He is retired. He's had a great job. He takes gorgeous pictures. He goes here, he goes there. He takes his pictures. Um, he's a gearhead. I'll give him that. But he enjoys what he's doing. He doesn't sell them. He does print one every once in a while, puts it up on his wall, or gives it as a gift. But for him, he's successful in that. And to me, he is successful because he does what he enjoys, and he keeps doing it, and he keeps trying new things, even if he's a gearhead, which is like, dude, how many lenses do you need? Um,
All of them.
but sorry, no. Well, no, not for me. Let's put it that way. Let's not get into that. But I think that's why this quote, you're latching onto that, which is fine. To me, that's not what I thought of, because to me, I thought of exactly that. However it is that you think when you're starting, you're going to become, a lot of those people aren't going to become that. You know what I mean? But I think that's also true in any field, by the way. I think that's, I mean, in any field of study. I know from my case, I got my PhD in one thing, and it sure as fuck isn't what I'm doing now. Granted, it comes in a bit handy, but so it's actually, and maybe that's why it affected me so much, because it's a fact of life. You think you're going one way, and COVID-19 hits, and not so much. This is a perfect example. Jennifer, you got anything to say? You're just sitting there laughing at us.
I'm enjoying the time
Oh,
with
okay.
you. The what I took from this quote is the eye of the photographer. So I notice when I see other people take pictures, the framing, where I would frame it differently, or so I feel like my eye has always been with me. I've been in photography for, gosh, I remember blowing my paychecks on, film, when I was in high school. And so the eye has always been there. And people, are just like, well, you know, how do you see this? Because it's a simple, there's a couple of, like, I've helped people where they're like, I want this picture, and I've just helped them just frame it right, and that's the picture they wanted, but they don't have that eye, is where I kind of took from that quote. We can, and you know I have no schooling in photography, but Tumblr has, like, I look back at my early Tumblr photography, and I'm like, wow, I have learned so much, getting in with the photography community and really learning about my photography. So it just grew from there. So I don't think, I don't have other things to learn and successful. I'm with Pete, almost everything is successful that I do because I enjoy this.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that about Tumblr, and then I won't say anything else. But that's exactly what happened to me. And I think what's really great is that this time I was already posting stuff in Tumblr. And again, Lens Blur was I mean, it was when Lens Blur was starting, but they reblogged one of my photos and then they reblogged another one. And I'm like, oh my God, my photos are good enough for somebody else to share. And then I started to read stuff, and I started to, and because of the digital community, and I think I've said this before, I'm totally a digital baby. I might have been born in an analog era, but I am definitely, I'm the model of what someone who thrives in digital in all its facets. And that Tumblr was an amazing place. But you did make me think of the fact, Jennifer, too, that one of the things I've always had is a good critical eye. Over the years, I've learned how to critique stuff and evaluate and look at stuff in certain ways in a much more detailed way. But the bottom line, I have always had that eye, even not just for my photography, but for others' work, of looking at stuff and going, there's this and this and this and this with video, with film, and all this stuff, and which I learned to support. But I've always had that. I've always had that. So yes.
I didn't. I learned that all.
Well, which is fine, but
No,
still, you have.
that's why I'm kind of, this is what, because I really believe, and I believe that from the bottom of my heart, that no, in art, no matter what kind of art it is, maybe when we take something like dancing, for example, and someone doesn't really, um
Don't dance.
no, I don't. I know I
Good.
certainly won't dance, but if someone doesn't have, like, the physical abilities for that, then yeah, they can't do it in the way that most people do it. But like photography, even painting, if you have the interest, if you have the interest and nothing else, it's only about the interest, then everyone can learn everything. Here's the thing, though. Can you, and maybe that is the I don't know. Can you do something completely new? But I I refuse to accept that now in the 21st century there's anything new. Everything has been done already. So it's now we're living in a world where it's rather a matter of looking at things from a different angle, or combining stuff that already is established as or used to be something new some years or centuries or decades ago. But everyone can learn, if you have the interest, everyone can learn to be an amazing photographer. There's and as I said, it's a question of seeing something new, because seeing, yes, indeed, and no question about that, the seeing part is the photography part. Everyone, I can teach a 12-year-old to do the correct exposure on their cameras. There's nothing, you don't, it's not witchcraft, it's not rocket science, it's just a matter of knowing three things and then practice. That's all. But seeing, um, and being open for experimentation and being curious, and I think the curiosity and the interest and the willingness to spend time and energy, that is what that is all there is to it.
Right, but and I don't disagree with you, but I think it goes back to what Stephen King said about writing. You know, you can take anyone and teach them certain rules and guidelines and make them a reasonably good communicator in the written word. Okay. However, to be stellar, to be someone who can communicate things, who can be creative, and and I've said this I think before, I shy away from the whole newness thing. Although I will say, interestingly enough, Imogen Cunningham was one of those photographers, because she was there at the beginning, who did create images that were new in photography. And one of my favorite ones is her photos of the white lily, which ¿cómo se llama el tipo este who did all the homoerotic stuff? Of course, you all understood that.
That's your thing, not mine.
Robert, no, I was talking about
Yeah.
Spanish. No, it's not all homoerotic, but Robert Mapplethorpe. He did the pictures of the white lilies, which are almost exact copies of what Cunningham did decades earlier. Did he copy them intentionally? I don't think so. He just looked at them in a different way. The quality of the lighting and so on is different, because these are obviously, and if they're not, they're really well processed, in studio still lives, and so there's these huge differences, but they're still almost the same thing. So I think it's a matter of everything that you said, but the bottom line is, you can, like you said, yeah, I think you can teach someone to take a good picture, and like Jennifer said, frame it properly, and here's the but that communication, and again, I'm going to go back to what Pete said, of having a photograph of something. I think anyone can take a picture of something, but I think there really has to be something innate that can be fed, that can be nourished, that is then letting someone take a picture of
Right.
something. Okay,
I think
does that make sense?
It's the difference between good and great.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's all do that.
Okay, next quote.
Next.
Thank you, Mark, for shutting us up.
No, very
No
good.
problem.
The next quote. Portraits I've done in the past, I've always thought were a reflection of me, by Judy Dater. Portraits I've done in the past, I've always thought were a reflection of me.
That's interesting, because writing, if you look at people who analyze writing, they always say that part of the artist or part of the writer is in the characters that he writes. And I think it's also partly true to photographs, not just portraits, but what we photograph must reflect some part of our character.
Definitely.
Totally.
It's kind of interesting that you say that, because years ago I was involved in a project where I did this was a short film project, and I did the making of. So I was on set doing making of, and the DP of that of that short film, the cameraman, came to me and said, I realized that you're always very far away. You never come close. And it's that it was just a comment that he just kind of dropped, right? And I went home and I really thought about that comment like literally for days. And I found that comment in so many things that I did, like as being the person who takes a step back and rather the observer, right? And it's when we talk about landscape photos, I so much enjoy doing wide angle photos where everything is on the shot rather than, and for me, when getting my macro lens, this was really a tough thing for me to learn how to work with a macro lens to really get closer because you have no chance with, well, of course you can use that lens like any other lens, but um, I feel like I feel at home with wide angle. So this is just when we it's same. I showed you for a couple of the photos of one of the wedding shots that I did when I went with the groom the whole day, and it was almost everything was done with a wide angle lens, and it were very unusual photos um, for that
And very
occasion.
good, by the way.
Thank you very. And I would so much love to show them, and maybe I'll ask the couple. Maybe I make it. Maybe I can show some of the photos, and I we can do a show about that and talk about the photos and what's what I learned about that, or I can make a video. So I'm pretty positive that they will agree to that. So I will ask them. So this is the thing, and I think every person has a very unique perspective. So there's genetics, there's the upbringing, so we see things differently, and that's what makes us unique, and that's how we approach things. And that's why for me, and you mentioned that a couple of times before with photography rules, we need to learn that these rules are guidelines or kind of safety belts, right? That they we or safety, how do you call these swimming things that you put on so that you don't drown, right? So you can rely on them. That's what you, if you go with that rule of thirds, whatever, you'll end up with a decent photo. So you're safe with that. And that's also what I learned in film school. Like there are these shots, you need those, do them, you have them, forget them, and then do the interesting stuff. And so we need to learn to stay hungry, right? And to not being satisfied with the usual and just explore. And like yesterday I posted a photo to my blog, again macro. I've been obsessing over macros lately. A macro shot that it was done with a wide angle lens. And I just this is was really another learning thing for me. I usually when I have a wide angle lens on my camera, and I wouldn't even dream of taking a macro, and I would just went with that lens on my camera because that time I only had that one lens with me. I think I just had that lens with me, or I was too lazy to take out the other lens, and I was on a path that I was was on like for a million times already. And I thought, okay, what will happen if I just get as close as ever I can? How close can I get with that lens? I never tried that. And so this is the thing. Not restrict yourself. Just try things out, experiment, be curious, and then suddenly you'll find, even in your own uh, um, s- how do you say it? Safety safe zone,
Zone.
no, zone
Safety zone. Yeah. Safe
safety
zone.
zone.
Yeah.
You will find ways to do things differently than and explore completely new areas suddenly, which was like for me that kind of clicked and said, okay, wow, I restricted myself so much because this is a wide angle lens. You have to take wide angle landscape photos with that. No, do something very different with that thing. And so that was a cool moment.
So that's really interesting because my experience is the complete opposite. Um, Even in portraiture, when I've done, except when I did that one studio shoot, well, it wasn't a studio, it was truly a studio shoot, which was set up and the camera and you stand there and blah, blah, blah. But when I take portraits, um, even if I'm using my 24-105 now, for example, I tend to get close to the people. I love, for example, my portraits of my mom. It's like sitting across from her in a restaurant, and it's right there. The pictures of you, actually, the picture of you and Heiko at Oktoberfest with you with your beer and Heiko looking in the up. That one was across the table. I mean, I enjoyed that getting up close, but it's interesting that you mentioned that about your wide angle lens because when I first started with my baby, with my D50, which I no longer have, um, I didn't know about lenses and you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. And what I would often do, and I still do this for the plant photos, is I would sometimes get really close. And of course, it will. There's the distance, the close-up distance that it'll go, and it won't focus. So I started to sort of learn and back and forth until I would get the focus that I wanted. And I've always done that. I've always done that. And of course, now I bought the ¿cómo se llama esto? The lens, the filters, the lens, the filters, the magnifying filters. And oh, really cool.
Yeah, I just thought about that. I'm stupid. I'm sorry. I really have to apologize. I should have thought about that.
That's a really good idea. But
Yeah.
so to me, the getting close has always been part of the process of taking pictures. And with people, especially, I mean, it's and there's another quote. So why don't you, after we finish this one, go to the Annie Leibovitz quote?
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Or are we finished?
No. Sorry. I don't know how that got in there. It was from last time. I fuck it. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm not supposed to say stuff like that.
Too late. I already said that word several times.
I don't care what you say.
Okay.
Never
Well,
care.
we know that.
It was good. It was unintentional, but it was good. Okay, Annie Leibovitz. Yeah. So portraits I've done. What I want to throw in here again is what damn, I forgot. Picture of Dorian Gray. What is the name of the author?
Oh,
yeah,
not Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde said, and I cannot quote him verbatim, but he said that basically what we see in a text, right, or that the art mirrors the spectator more than the author. And so I think it goes the other way around as well. When Judy Dater says portraits I've done in the past, I've always thought were a reflection of me. I think that's the same thing in terms of the viewer, right? I think when we look at a portrait, then what we see in or not just a portrait, any kind of photo, picture, whatever, movie, piece of music, whatever it is, it says more about us, what we feel about this piece of art, than it says about the piece of art itself or the artist who made it. Because what, and here we go, Ansel Adams said that we bring to the art of photography all the whatever it says. Well,
Right. And I think for in this quote's case, I think she is saying that when she, because that's how I thought of it, that when she looks at the photographs, she's not seeing as much about the other person as she is seeing about herself. So it's not necessarily saying that that's what's important when the person is looking at it, because that actually goes back to me to the Gordon Parks quote about the words, and we talked about that you can say all you want about your picture or call it whatever, but the bottom line is it is what the person who's looking at it that also adds that that special touch to that person, or that special sense to that person. So it's a balancing act, and there's really, again, no rules. But I think in her quote specifically, she is talking about, you know, from her point of view as the photographer. And I agree, I have to say. But anyway, the Annie Leibovitz quote is perfect. I mean, I know it's later, but if you want to go ahead and
No, we can do that. I
oh, there we
prepared.
go.
Now I learn. See, even in my age, I still learn.
Stop
Uh,
it. Okay, so go ahead and
no,
read it.
I'm I'm old. I'm not as old as you, but I'm old. That's why, because I'm old. That's why I wear this T-shirt today. That's my right. Okay, Annie Leibovitz said, "A thing that you see in my pictures is that I was not afraid to fall in love with these people. The thing that you see in my pictures is that I was not afraid to fall in love with these people."
So I chose this for several reasons. I do the same thing. And not just the people, but the things. Um, there's something, and now I'm getting emotional about this, but there's something about, even if it's a stranger on the street that I only photograph at that moment, especially when I'm taking the picture and when I take the photograph, there's something I take from it. There's something that feeds my soul. There's something that I see, not necessarily that's beautiful or that I fall in love with, but I do fall in love with. I do love that person at that moment. Not, or they don't have to be beautiful. They don't, you know what I mean? There's just this, for me, on my side of it, not saying on theirs. There's just something really incredibly um, emotionally and spiritually touching about that. And the ability to be able to be in that person's sphere and in that person's existence, and to usually influence their way of seeing themselves, I think, and maybe brighten their day because this asshole with a fucking camera said, "Oh, can I take your fucking picture?" Um, I've only once had somebody who it turned a little, not ugly, but who it turned a little negative.
I'm sorry.
But but again, there I still look at those pictures and I think, you know, even then there was like, no, that's fine. There was still a connection. Um, but again, with the same, also I have to say, with the stuff I take photographs, I look at my pictures now, of even though some of the ones I took with my baby, of some of the plants and buildings and so on, and there's something that just, you know what I mean? And again, it doesn't have to be something beautiful, but there's something that I feel such a connection to. And I do like my photographs. I do. And some of them I do fall in love with. So I chose it because of this. I also chose it because I know someone who I've talked to who actually said pretty much the same thing. They said, you know, when I photograph people and flowers and things, I fall in love with them. Um, and so yeah, to me, this is goes back to Judy Dater's quote, because it says to me more, to me, when I look at those pictures and when I look at the portraits and street photography I've done, when I ask if I can take their picture, um, it says more about me and what I saw in them at that moment than it does about them. Which is interesting because usually the comments I've gotten are, "Oh, you captured this person's soul, or you captured this person's personality at this moment," and it's like, sure, but you know. So yeah.
What I find interesting about that Annie Leibovitz quote is, I mean, we of course we can take it word by word and say, hey, what you see is that what I was not afraid to fall in love with these people, just like you said, Fern, that for a moment you feel an emotional connection with that person or that thing, whatever. So yeah, definitely it's the same for me. If I don't care for what I see, then I don't take a photograph, right? But I think it we can even put that on a slightly different level. as in what is love, right? Love is being interested in, is being being open to invest time, emotion, energy into something. So when we take a photo of something, that reveals, and that's what you said about um, the previous quote by Judy Dater, right? We reveal a lot about ourselves. Why do we take a photo of something? Why do we invest time, energy? I mean, it's there. Of course, there are people who just not talking that down or talking down to that. It's an approach. Everyone has their own approach. So there are people who just take snapshots. That is a very different approach than my approach, for example, but it's a very valid approach, right? Why not? That is their way of seeing the world. That is their way of capturing the world. That is, and it tells a lot about those people. What exactly it tells? Well, we need to get to know these people better, right? But um, it's certainly a different way of approaching photography. Then why do I get so close to that flower? Why do I climb that stupid mountain? Why do I walk like in like I did a couple of years ago in Greece, 4 or 5 hours, blazing hot sun, walking up a volcano to take photos of the beast, right? It was an inactive volcano, but still, right? And it
Why
was
do I fall in the mud?
why do you fall in the mud? Why do you climb that rock with a fucking backpack on your back when it's like 500 feet down, and just to take that stupid shot of that tree that grows out of the rock? And so the, it tells a lot about us what we do, but it only tells so much as we know, or it tells a lot about the photographer, the artist, but it only tells so much as we know about the circumstances, as we know about what they did. Sure, when we have a kind of experience in and sometimes we see photos and we know what kind of went into taking a shot like that. When I see I don't know, a long time exposure at night in winter, I kind of have a feeling what that, what that, what that takes, because I did that stuff myself, right? Or when you're on the mountaintop, etc., etc., etc. And if you know the mountain, and you know there's you have to walk that up, and it takes like 8 hours to get up there, and to wait for the fucking sunrise or sunset, and then you have to. So yeah, sure, you have to know a bit about the context. But yes, a photograph tells a lot about, or can tell a lot about, the person. I think another thing that we always tend to forget is that is not that just that one photograph. It's the body of work. If you take a look at one photo of a person, it doesn't tell shit about that person usually, unless it's one very super specific photo, right? When you okay, he climbed down that active volcano, and but the body of work. So, and that's why that's what I love about Tumblr, for example, right? Or general. I mean, Tumblr is the platform that I'm, like you are, active on, but that we have the possibility, usually have the possibility, to look at the archives of blogs, right? And to see what did these people do, because yeah, there's not so much new. We all have seen that one close up shot of that one flower. That is of course always a different flower, but it's always the fucking same. But when we take the when we look at what this person has done as well, and this is that's why I'm kind of patting my own back right now, and because I'm kind of proud that I have been have been keeping my blog for now 7 years or something, or 6 years or something. And even though like every second week I got fed up with my own shit and think I have to delete that, and I hate everything I've ever done, and it's all just crap, and I how why and I still manage to keep my blog up and not delete anything. And when I go into my archives, and I cringe and I want to delete half my blog. And but I didn't do that, or I don't do that, for the simple reason that I say, hey, this is my path, right? And I see what I have done and what I have achieved. And if I compare my photos now that I think are decent photos, to the photos that I made like 5 years ago, then I think, yeah, I learned a lot in that time. And I hope that in the next 5 years, when I look back at the photos that I do now, that I in 5 years say, yeah, fuck it, I learned a lot. Why did I post that stuff? So there's it the context, and now when I look at photos 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 3 years ago, I know, because I know the context, of course. I know why I did that photo, and why I put energy into that, and why I took that shot, and why I put these together, because they're, even if it doesn't seem like that, there goes a lot of thought in my maybe sometimes too much thought into my stuff. So yeah, definitely. You can hardly, last thing that I will say about that, I know I rambled a lot, but a very clever person once told me, if you ever want to get as close as you can get to a person's brain, then read a book that they have written. And funny story, that guy was a neurosurgeon, so a person who actually worked on people's brains, right? So, but if you ever want to get as close as ever possible to a person's brain, read books that I've written. And I think that if you ever want to get as close as you can get to a person's emotions and feelings, look at their photos that they made, or the paintings that they did, or the music they composed. So because that is photography and paintings and music, and maybe, yeah, dance certainly as well, sculptures, everything that is more, that is a very direct emotional response, or can be, at least.
So I'm glad you said all of that, and I don't think I've ever said that before. But one of the things that the other reasons that I was really attracted to this quote, and that I'm like, hold up Annie Leibovitz as one of my inspirations, is that I remember in one of the documentaries about her work that I saw, um, someone said, and I've heard this about other photographers, but this is the first time I'd heard this said, that the celebrities that she took photographs of, and some of the photographs, like the one of Meryl Streep with the white makeup and then pulling her face, or the one of Whoopi Goldberg in that tub full of milk, the one of John Lennon and Yoko Ono, where John Lennon is completely naked, curled up next to Yoko Ono in a fetal position. The person said the reason celebrities want to have them take her picture and that they trust her is because she will make them look good. Now, she won't, of course, like the Meryl Streep picture, or even the Whoopi Goldberg picture, because it's not an elegant picture. It's just her with, I'm assuming, very little makeup just to cut reflection. I don't know if you've seen it, in a white tub filled up with milk, and you're looking at her, and it's all covered except for her hands and her face. Um, and that really struck me, and that's what I always strive for in my pictures. Excuse me, pictures of people. They don't have to be pretty. They don't have to be perfect. I'm not going to remove wrinkles or any of that stuff. But I mean, I will remove blemishes sometimes, a little. But I do want to show them respect. And that to me is what made me think of this too, because that's a part of the falling in love with that person at that moment. So yeah, that's, and by the way, an hour and a half.
I think respect is the word. I think respect, and I think respect is a form of love.
Mark, Jen, anything you want to add?
No, I'm good with it.
I'm good.
As long as you think so, that's all that matters.
It's perfect.
Right. Do we want to take one more quote?
I'll let you.
Okay,
I really like
then I'll choose one of the ones. Sorry?
the Ansel Adams.
The Ansel Adams. I don't have one by Ansel Adams. Do you have one by Ansel Adams?
Yeah, it was between Judy Dater and the Annie Leibovitz.
Yeah. When words become unclear, I shall focus with photographs. When images become inadequate, I shall be content with silence.
So let me copy that. Let me put that in the. So for the chat, maybe to explain, I didn't know that Fern had actually made a collection of quotes. So if I knew that, or if we would have, or if I would have, it's my fault, of course, my mistake. If I would have been asked that and been more clear and more, no, not more clear, so just asked how we were going to do that, then I would have I would have prepared that. It's totally my fault. I just thought we read the quotes that we collected, which is of course silly of me. So when words become unclear, I shall focus with photographs. When images become inadequate, I shall be content with silence.
Jen, you want to handle this one since you brought it up?
I love this one because for me, it was photography is a way of dealing with emotions as well as issues in my life. So, sometimes I can't speak, so then it's photos. Sometimes I don't want to talk to anybody, so I just go through this. Like Tumblr is it's kind of an escape, but it's a silent escape sometimes. Of just travel through images that give me emotions, and I can feel things without having to, just being content with the silence. So it's beautiful. It really is. I travel through many of my emotions with photography. So it's just, I'm a huge, Ansel Adams was kind of what pushed me into photography. So I really love this.
Mark, you're smiling.
I'm thinking.
Careful, you might turn into Pete.
The problem I have is that I'm probably too silent. I think I've spent 90% of my life having people saying, "Well, what do you think? Say something." But because I do tend to hide, I'm always the person behind the camera. I'm always the observer, as Pete said earlier, from the observer from across the room or across the distance. So this is pretty much a summary of who I am.
That's interesting because on the one hand, and I understand both of you. On the one hand, I have a disease called the personality, apparently, and apparently people at least think it's funny or whatever. I think I'm dull and I prefer
Nobody
silence. Huh? What'd you say?
Nobody thinks you're funny.
Well, I don't think I'm funny at all,
You're right.
actually. but so I have this, and I will just add, for years I hated it, and it was something that I just really. And then I realized, you know what? There's millions of people out there who would absolutely want to have whatever it is whatever chemical imbalance I have that makes me be this way. So I've learned to be grateful for it, but I do prefer, and I do live my life in silence. I live in a small town now. I live in a, I don't own a TV. I mean, I still watch stuff and stuff. I don't. So to me, that whole silence thing is amazing. But again, because I have this ability to use words, I understand what he's saying, but it doesn't in any way, shape, or form apply to me because I know I'm a good communicator, and I was born with this ability again, and it goes back to the Imogen Cunningham quote, where I was born with this ability to communicate via words spoken, via words written, via images, specifically now photography. So the only way that I understand this is the day I cannot communicate in any of those ways, then I'm going to turn off the lights and get the fuck out of Dodge because there would be no reason for me to live. Although I also live very quietly, I live by myself and so on, but there's still that communication part of who I am that's very crucial to me. So yes, that's why I picked that, because it's opposite to me in some ways, but I get it.
I really don't. I can't say that I really understand what Ansel Adams wanted to say with it. I get the first part. When words become unclear, I shall focus with photographs. Some things we cannot. We cannot. So words are always inadequate. Words are just symbols. Words are words can never express what is really there. Words are always an abstraction. Words are all it's using words will always lead us into a complete wrong way, right? Because language is weird and language is never accurate. So I get it. Sometimes we cannot express something with words, which happens all of the time. I think this is one reason why for every photographer, artist of some sort, which is not being an author, right? Um, is because words cannot do that. So words are useful for certain areas, for a lot of areas, for communication, for example. But there are things that cannot be put down in words, and that's why we, Ansel Adams, compensated for that with photographs. But when images become inadequate, I shall be content with silence. So there, what is it that he wants to tell me? Maybe he should have made a photo about that. I don't know, right? So okay, sometimes even photos are not enough. Then we better not communicate at all, or what is, because photography is also communication, right? So what does it mean? I really don't have any way of grasping what he could have meant.
Well,
I
no, to me, I
think
mean,
they're just.
go ahead.
I think there are some things that are just too intense to communicate in any way.
Mhm.
There's some emotion or some expression in your life where the best you can do is you're either screaming it into the void or you throwing your hands up, and there's no clear logical way of expressing it.
Mm.
And in times like that, you just be silent because nobody can understand you. It's just beyond.
So in terms of, there are things that simply cannot be communicated in any way. So you just,
Yeah.
but well, that's actually a beautiful. It's kind of a beautiful thing, right? There are things that are just whatever it is to an extent, right? Maybe can of course also be horrible things, but there's some things that are just for us, for nobody
Yeah.
else, right? So and so don't even try to communicate because it's not possible. I like that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's good. It's a great. Thank you. That's a great way to see. Yesterday, funnily enough, on my way to work, I listened to a podcast, and it was about words, right? And it was that about exactly the how language is inadequate in so many ways, right? When we say, like, for example, what is a tree made out of? Right? It's not made out of wood because the tree is wood. It's not made out of wood. Same, right? Like we say the lightning flashes. It's wrong. The lightning doesn't flash. The lightning is a flash, and the flash is the lightning. So it's language is da- it's in so many ways so horribly wrong. It's just it can just be a symbol, and so taking words as what what they are is just is actually pretty stupid because they can never words can never ever in any way be an accurate representation for what is really there, no matter what it is. And so
Exactly.
sorry.
No, carry on.
And so maybe photography, music, and this when I studied dramatics, it was a talk about opera, and I loved what my professor back then said when he said, right, this, and I think the English word is aria. Is that the word in an opera, right? So that's it's actually it's emotion stretched in time. So that's the one emotion that one person has, right? I'm dying, whatever, and singing like half an hour. It's just that one bit of emotion stretched in for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, and that's only what music can do, right? And so photography can do something else, and that's what Fern always frequently says, that there's no such thing as different art forms. There's just art, and it all influences each other. Yeah, you said that. Or did I dream that? It so- it
I think
sounds it sounds a bit too clever. So probably you didn't say that. No, you said that. So
I've
there's
heard a quote. I've heard a quote that says that a photograph is emotion captured in space, and music is emotion captured in time.
yeah, definitely.
But again, and that's interesting because it goes back to the Gordon Parks quote that with words and photos, if they're put together just right, they add something. And the same thing, and we see that on Tumblr all the time. People who post photos and then they put a link to a specific song because to them, the two of them is just it's perfect. It's a perfect fit. So it really just bottom line, it just depends on do whatever the hell you want to do.
Yeah.
And hopefully someone else will be able to make sense of it. And sometimes people don't, and that's fine. You know.
This is one, and I think, yeah, you three saw that photo, and we had even a little chat about that, Fern and I. And I don't know, I don't think I can show it on YouTube, that photo, without having to flag that video as restricted. The photo of the young woman with the teddy bear walking down my hallway, and that story that I wrote about it, which is kind of interesting because it was a model shoot that I had or we had here, and we had like half an hour, and I had this idea and said, okay, just wear that shirt and take the teddy bear and just walk right through me. And I laid down on the floor, and I just took a couple of shots. And I don't know where the idea came from. It was just kind of I don't know. This is maybe that's creativity. I don't know. So just having an idea, just doing it. And so I sat there with the photo, and I'm a very pragmatic person. So what do I do with that photo? I have no idea where that came from, right? And then I started. It started. I I looked at the photo and edited the photo, and there were like and then I started to come up with a story, which is partly like 80% of that story is true, because the teddy bear is indeed just as old as I am, right? And this was gifted to me by my grandfather on my birthday, on my day of birth, right? And I still have it, and it has two differently colored eyes. And so there's a lot of true stuff in that. And then I just kind of came up with a story about that photo. So it had to make sense, and it was so the photo um inspired the story, and the story gave the photo suddenly meaning, because that photo didn't have any meaning. It was just an idea. Hey, I don't know, take that teddy bear, come walk towards me, and I'll take a couple of shots, right? And so it's for me, this was a very interesting, very interesting, and I will link that, because I don't think I can show that photo in this video. I will put a link in the description to that shot with the story, um because it's online. And so for me, this was a super fascinating experience. To A photo triggers a story, and the story suddenly gives the photos meaning. And so, yeah, we can all, it's what you said. Sometimes a song can trigger emotion. When I edit my photos, I always hear music, and the photos definitely turn out differently. The edit of a photo turns out differently depending on which music I listen to. So absolutely.
As long as it's not Phil Collins in Genesis.
It's always Phil Collins and always Genesis. And it's sometimes, no, it's not always, but actually a lot. Not Phil Collins solo work, rarely when photo editing, but a lot of Genesis. And I can show you, I think, a thousand photos, not a thousand, but a dozen photos on my blog that are actually inspired by Genesis songs. And I had a even a kind of there's a Genesis fandom on Tumblr, and there was a time when I posted a lot of photos with references to Genesis songs, and they enjoyed that a lot. I got lots of positive feedback. So, oh, I got the reference. I
There's
understand.
no accounting for bad taste. I don't care how many people. Anyway, I think it's
It's a all
yeah.
right. Then let's wrap that up. So, first of all, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure having
It was
you,
wonderful to be here.
and I hope it
Thank
won't
you
be
for
the
having
last.
me.
Thank you, and you're invited every time again back. So Jennifer's third time here, and I think she was hardly ever as silent as today, because we talked so much. Please interrupt us for all future guests. You can interrupt us, and please do, right? And I hope it wasn't your last time with us, Mark. It was an absolute pleasure. So
It was
again, you
great
can
to be
reach
here.
anytime when we do that. And
Oh, my announcement. Sorry,
Oh,
my
Yes,
announcement.
Amy
Oh, go-
remembered.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to start using Lightroom.
how come? No, seriously,
Um,
I'm not being.
I saw this article today and it said, oh, you can do this in Lightroom, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? I have it because I pay for the Lightroom and Photoshop because I have to, although I think you can get Photoshop without Lightroom and I can still have Camera Raw, but I figure, which is what I use. I use Camera Raw, which is exactly the same thing almost. It's
Yeah,
just the user
Light,
interface is different.
Lightroom is a user interface for Camera Raw, basically, and
Yeah.
yeah, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the outward facing. So I keep thinking, and I was looking at it today, and I'm like, you know what? There's a couple of things that I already discovered that you can do that I kind of liked for this one picture. So I'm like, but I've been using Camera Raw for what, 8 years. So I don't want to learn something new. I already do too much of that at work. And I have a lot of that to do now. So I don't know.
You don't have to learn any about the process, about the processing. You don't really have to learn anything new because it's exactly the same.
Well, yeah, but no, it's not. I mean, it's where everything is, and one
Oh,
of the things I couldn't figure
sorry.
out is
HSA on the chat said they started using Darktable. We should talk about Darktable.
I have
Please
no idea what
come
that dark table is.
on the show with us, whoever you are, and thank you for being on the chat as well. We should because I downloaded Darktable and I have no friggin' idea what that is and how that works. So teach me, please. So sorry, interrupt.
Yeah. Well,
No,
there's also, what is it? What's the one that's really popular now?
Amy's
Capture
using
one.
that, I think.
Capture One.
Capture One. No, then it's not that. What's Amy's using? Capture One, yeah.
So yeah. Oh yeah,
No,
no, I had an announcement, Amy, and it's done. All right, so I'm done.
you're done. So again, thank you all for being with us. All you lovely people on the chat, HSA, as I mentioned, Amy, Montico, Steph, Mike Mansell, Roy was on the chat, James was on the chat. Did I forget someone? I don't think we were sometimes on the chat. So, yeah, we had a couple of problems in the beginning with the sound after like only half an hour or something. I was, because I apparently had a checkbox wrong, able to resolve that. So, thank you for your patience. And I think we will do something like that again. I like the idea of talking.
Do your quotes. We never did
Yeah, we
yours.
can do that. We can do that. Not the next time. We'll do something different next time, but we would definitely do something like that again. And everyone is cordially invited to join us. Oh, Eduardo! Now, HSA, Eduardo. Um, Gotcha. Eduardo
So,
Picchini, photography. And I'm
oh,
pretty
hi.
sure we will see one of his photos later, right? Won't we, Fern? I
Well, that's what I was going to say. Don't forget to also let everybody know that we are going to be doing, and we have to talk about this afterward.
right,
We are going to be doing a critique.
right,
So
because
don't forget to submit.
for those of you who don't know what Fern is talking about, which will be like everyone, because nobody knows what Fern is talking about, usually we will be doing a photo critique, meaning we will be talking about your photos that you submit. And so if you
An anonymous critique.
anonymously, so please, you say the procedure. You talk about the procedure, baby.
Oh no! So what we do is we don't do this live. We do this but we do record it. We look at your picture, and we'll actually what I finally have done the last couple of times, although it's been a long time, is it's just the segment, and usually we're doing it now for like 3 to 4 minutes. We're keeping it as short as possible, and we just take a look at the picture. It's just the picture, no introduction or anything, and here's what we have to say. Wham bam, we're done. And then I post each one of those individually. So it's just 4-minute blocks, 3 to 5 minute blocks of the critique of the photo, and that's all that you see is the finished product. It's just the photo, so you can get an idea of what we're talking about while we're doing this. Jen, you joined us for one, didn't you?
I did.
There you go. So yeah, but it's been a long time since we've done it.
Yes, it
Um,
has.
and we posted it on it's on LuxLit, and I'll repost it on LuxLit. It's on PWS.
Did you use any specific tags for these?
No, they just have to submit it to.
I mean, so that I could have put a link into the description of this video, so that we can just see all the videos, because they're not, those of you who are new to this, they're not on my channel. Fern
on mine,
posted
yeah.
them on his channel. So send me a link to well, I have a link to your channel on my blog. So I don't know, you have two accounts, so I don't know in which one
Right. So I'll
you
take a look at that.
go.
Right.
So send me the link, and I'll add the link in the description as well to this video.
Okay.
Lots of stuff, lots of links will be in the description of this video on YouTube. So not on Tumblr, just on YouTube.
Yes. And so the thing
Maybe
is,
tomorrow, I hope
you submit them to oh dear God, InConversation
also, the
critiques.
link will also be in the description, where you can submit your photos.
Right. Okay. And submit 1 or 2 pictures, and of course, there's no guarantee that we'll take both. Sometimes we've done both from the same person. Sometimes we've only done one. Sometimes we haven't used it. So it can happen that way. But we should have them by July, because yes. So
Oh, we won't be doing it today. I thought we were gonna do it.
no. I listen. After all this conversation, I think we've had enough. But we can always just meet up, on here, or and just, or on Zoom, actually, which is what I use now too
We can use
for
Zoom,
work.
no
Yeah.
problem. If you have a possibility to record it.
Yeah, and oh yeah, you can same thing. You can record. You can actually record and save it just as audio,
No.
which I really like, because then I can just drop that with the picture, and I have even to do less editing.
And people don't have to see our stupid faces. How awesome is that? And I'm talking about my stupid face, not yours. Your face is gorgeous, of course.
All right, so I'm done.
All right. Then I'm done too. So again, thank you all very much for joining us, for being part of this. And next time we will hopefully have no problems like that, like the ones we had. We haven't had any major technical problems for a very long time. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you all. Bye bye till next time, and I'm gonna end the broadcast.